Today, we are talking about a hot topic, rage, and what we can do with it and how we can use it to benefit us and even others, and just how we're feeling about that word right now. So, Felicia, it's interesting. You and I discussed this topic and we're coming at it from two different angles, but I think that's perfect. That's like such a girlfriend circle way to discuss anything, right?
Exactly. It is just the magic of being us. So I'm here for it. And I just gave us a little heart for it. Yeah.
Hey,
It's so true. Well, how is it showing up for you these days in midlife? Rage. Like what's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
well, the first thing that is top of mind, and I have to be honest about this, is not really about my personal life. I do want to talk about a couple things later, but it's just what's going on around us right now. That there is so much chaos that is unnecessary. I'm here in California, and there are suddenly these raids that are terrorizing communities, literally terrorizing communities. I don't know about you all, but my social media is filled with these, and it is creating terror. And so what that can do for me, regardless of what it is we're looking at in the world, is kind of create a sense of hopelessness at times, almost like a paralysis. And what I like about rage is that I think rage can get us out of that hopelessness and into more of a righteous anger. And I want to quote the late and great Representative John Lewis, a wonderful civil rights activist, who said to go out and get in some good trouble, right? And that permission to use our outrage to actually fuel different, protests, and to really demand that we treat each other like the human beings that we are is really top of mind for me right now. So, I recognize we are not a political podcast, but that is really what's happening all around us. And I feel like I can't put my head in the sand about it. So, do you feel me on that one?
I absolutely feel you on that one. And it's an interesting thing for me in this body because this body was grew in a direction where I became very afraid of my rage, very afraid of anger, and wasn't even allowed to express it. I mean, I
Mm,
can remember grown-ups just being like, "Isn't she so cute? She's angry," or making fun and not
mm,
letting me even tap into that righteous anger. So now, at the beautiful age of 52, realizing I'm hella angry about this, that, and the other, that I can just own it and I can work with it. And it's not going to consume me. It doesn't destroy me. I can absolutely sit with my rage and my anger, and I can do something productive with it. Or, I mean, I can choose. I can choose what I do with it. I can slash and burn, and watch you bleed out, or I can do something productive with it. And the old me would want to slash and burn, right?
mhm.
Because I couldn't even deal with the discomfort.
Yeah,
And now, oh my gosh, and lately, the stuff that I'm seeing and hearing, I have been able to sit with it and
yeah,
really tap into how exactly does that make me feel? What does it remind me of? And what do I see? What's happening right now? And to
yeah,
really be eyes wide open about all of it. And
yeah,
it's so different than even how I would have approached it 5 years ago.
yeah. And I think it's really important to be motivated by that feeling, right? Like, especially for us women in midlife who often had that kind of good girl training growing up, right? The Gen Xers, you just kind of grin and bear it. There should be a time where we say enough is enough. And we also know that there's a very long history labeling women as, quote, hysterical or witches. I mean, it goes back a long time. And to really own that righteous anger and to stand up for our rights and our needs is so important. And I do think younger women in general carry this burden, to smile more and to be nice. And I am seeing a lot of good discussions about how that's just a bunch of BS. But I agree with you. Boy, at this time of my life, I'm so done with that. I spent way too much energy worrying about pleasing others. And now it's just time to get real. And the world is a rough place right now. So if we're going to be real and honest, we probably should be mad, right? In some way or another with what we're witnessing and what we're living through. So I just say, let's own our righteous anger. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that is part
Mhm.
of feminine leadership.
Yeah.
And I think the culture wants to tell us that feminine leadership just makes everybody feel good. It doesn't rock the boat. It doesn't cause waves. I don't think that's true at all.
No.
I think that the divine feminine does create, but also will destroy and tear down and take the head off of something that is causing harm or being destructive. And so I think that this time in history is when we absolutely need to be tapping in to that well inside of us. And I think there is so much unprocessed anger too that just far too many women are holding on to. And they don't know what to do. And so we tend to get triggered.
Hmm.
And a triggered woman is scary. An angry woman is scary. I'm not gonna lie
Hmm.
and say, oh, it's not, it's all good. No. But then when we have the strength and the clarity and all of us is lined up, right? And why we're angry and we're doing something productive about it. To me, that is feminine leadership at its best. It's raw, it's real, it's gonna create change.
And I have to give a shout out because you know who I have been witnessing doing a lot of the protesting at like town halls and around town are older women. Women who
Yes,
are like second wave feminists who kind of know what was at stake. They're showing up. They're
they
using
are.
their privilege to show up and speak out and say no, 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 no. So shout out to them for kind of being the trailblazers at the moment right now. I'm just really seeing a lot of these older women be like, no, 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 we know what's at stake here. We're not going for this. I really deeply admire them for doing that on behalf of
I
all
do
of us.
too. And I'm having some interesting conversations with these ladies too. Just the other day, I was hanging out with a dear friend of mine. She just recently retired. And
Mhm.
I know she's watching, so I won't say her name or any other identifying details. But we were talking about for her this stage of life. And she's
Yeah.
like, I'm just owning it. I'm going to use my privilege. I'm going to use my voice. I'm going to use
Yeah.
my flexibility and freedom now that I am newly retired. And I'm
Yeah.
going to cause me a ruckus. She was telling me this, and I was just like, you go, girl. That's just incredible. Just seeing all that energy focused and how on fire she was and is.
Yeah.
And I see it too.
Yeah. So I agree. I'm like, it can be funneled into such productivity. And to your point, too, with this sort of like feminine part of ourselves that I believe all of us have access to, right? It's not even a gender issue. Like, how incredible could it be to like build a coalition and to literally build bridges? Rather than smashing everything in sight. I just think that we're really an important peace right now, if not the saving grace for what could happen. So I
Yeah.
think there's a power that we hold, that is really great. And it's not to assume that we're not all coming from different positions, and some of us do have more privilege than others. I want to acknowledge mine, by all means, but like I just want us to not feel hopeless. Hopeless keeps us stuck. Hopeless keeps us spiraling. Get outraged, get mad, and then do something. And there's so many incredible places that you can get lined up with right now and ways that you can use your voice. But I would just, yeah, like the great late John Lewis said, get in some good trouble. We need it.
Absolutely. And so the former therapist in me wants to also remind us to be responsible with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the anger and the rage, let's make sure that we're clean and clear about it because so many women we've seen some things, right? We've been treated unfairly. We don't get paid oftentimes the way we should. We kind of get patronized and like there's so many things that make us angry and it accumulates, right? And so we
Mhm.
can blow like one of the many volcanoes blowing on earth right now, which is a whole other thing that I'm really intrigued by, and the energy of what's happening on the planet. And you've heard me talk about this certainly on my Substack, that I firmly believe that we are in a time of healing
Mhm.
when so much is being brought up for us to look at and process and heal. So I want to remind girlfriends, let's do the healing work. Let's get clear. Why are we angry? Let's talk about for ourselves. What are the things that have made us angry in the past? Ways we've been treated or betrayed or abused or just all the things that would make us angry. And so I know for myself, I'm doing a lot of breath work. I'm doing a lot of journaling. I'm doing a lot of my own shadow work. I'm
Mhm.
doing a lot of somatic work. one thing that I'm doing lately that I think would be really easy for girlfriends who are listening to try is
Mhm.
you hold some pose with your muscles until you shake and you
Mm.
let yourself shake. And then you remind yourself that is just part of the anger in my body being released. And I
Mm.
think it's one of the many strategies that we have not been empowered with as well as humans in general, but certainly as women, that we can actually be with the emotions and energy in our bodies. So that's one of the things that I wanted to talk with us about. And if that feels too hot or it's too scary, girl, go manage this with your coach or your therapist. If you don't have one, it's time to get one because we are there. It is time as everything is crumbling, we want to rebuild the new world in our own image. And we can only do that if we're clean and clear on the inside. And so to express the anger and to heal. And what I've noticed is that healing is a lot more gentle
Mm.
than any of us imagine that it could be. And that's why I say if it's too hot for you, you're like, what are you talking about? No, healing is really hard and complicated. Then go get some help. Get someone to hold your hand in that process because you deserve that
Mm.
because we're gonna need you. You are needed in the times coming, and the times
Mhm.
right now,
Right. The time is
right?
exactly. Yeah, another thing that I've really been thinking about with around communication with people, especially when it's, a disagreement or my goodness, what we're having right now. There was this wonderful woman who was reporting from downtown Los Angeles, where there's been some big protests going on. She spoke so beautifully about trying to do peaceful protests, to not kind of fall into the trap of what I think is being manufactured. And she said something so beautiful because she was talking with someone else who was wanting to get really rageful. And she was trying to express to them if we can remain peaceful, we can actually like create something more meaningful. And the person turned to her and said, "Yeah, but look at these monsters." And this woman's response was so beautiful. I wish I could quote her. It was just one of these reels that I was watching. She said, "They're not monsters, they're scared people. They're people who are so scared, who have convinced themselves that they're backed up against this wall, that their only tactic is violence, right?" And we see this play out in, different governments, and we're seeing this play out in our world, honestly, in many different places. What I loved about that, Flashay, was that what she was really getting at was don't other everyone who you disagree with, even if what they're doing is horrible, because then we're taking humanity out of the equation and we have to keep humanity in it at the end of the day. We have to keep our humanity and we have to keep other people's humanity in focus. And so I just think that also it's very, very easy for us to just kind of turn into an us versus them. And we're seeing where that's getting us. It's not getting us anywhere good. So even in our own families, even with our own neighbors and discussions, if we can find some commonality rather than looking for the otherness of it all, we are going to be so much better off. So that's something I've been trying to practice. And it is a trip. I will notice myself just like making these micro judgments constantly about people around me and sizing them up and really challenging that narrative and going, give it a minute, look for the humanity, look for the commonality. I know it's like we're, I feel like, especially over these last several years, we've been trained to do the opposite now. And
Yeah,
sometimes for survival. But if we are in a position where we can try to actually communicate, how much better can we be from it? So that's been an exercise I also am trying, and I do that with Love Your Voice with women when they're trying to negotiate things at work. But I think we can do it in our day to day lives, and it's a pretty empowering thing if we can, try to do it together.
absolutely. And when we approach a person or a situation from a really, from a fight stance or from an angry stance or a judgmental one, nobody responds well to that. Nobody is like, "Oh, well, when you put it that way,
Right.
let's get together and share share an ice cream."
No one
No
wins.
one does that.
No one
Everyone they
wins.
get defensive back. There are only so many responses that someone can have. Also, I really believe this firmly too. When we other the other so much, we're also doing it to ourselves.
Yes,
So
we
I
are.
think there's something too about being gentle with ourselves. And that's also part of the healing process because I think as the more we can heal on the inside, the
Yeah,
less we see the division on the others on the outside as well. Um,
true.
and then of course we act accordingly from that place. And like you're saying, from a peaceful, intentional, um, supportive and growthful way.
Yeah.
We can do it from that place inside of ourselves.
And I think to your point, the kind of somatic body work and the journaling, the things that we can do for ourselves to keep ourselves stable will really help that as well. So I know a lot of us will think, oh, I got to be outward or totally inward. It's having a really beautiful balance of those two things. I love what you said too, which is if we're too much othering the someone else, then that's what we're oftentimes doing to ourselves. So yes, it's the kind of like radical acceptance that is really a challenge, but I think what would really help us right now. I have another angle on this, which is
What's
a
that?
bit more personal, but I think a lot of our girlfriends can relate to that, which is when we were talking about this theme of rage. Another word that came up for me was frustration. And the frustration I felt when I went into my old school doctor, OBGYN, had my perimenopausal symptoms. This was a few years ago. And this woman, and I've talked about this on our podcast, but she just told me, deal with it. This is what all women go through. You get to deal with it. And I just remember in her office at that moment feeling so small, feeling so vulnerable. I think my legs were literally splayed open in the stirrups. What can I say? Right? The whole thing. And yet going home and just going, this is not right. This is not okay. And finally thinking about it and really using that outrage to go find a new doctor, to be done with the other one, to switch doctors. And I wound up finding such a better fit who, laid out all of the options for me, has been nothing but supportive for me. But it was the frustration that actually motivated me to go make that change.
Exactly. Yeah, well, that leads into something that I want to talk about, which is that idea of boundaries, right? You made a boundary for yourself. This doesn't feel good. I don't like this. Could I do better? Yep. And the only way we know sometimes is but to get out there. But well, you saw when I moved back home, I was like asking everybody and their sister, who do you see? I'm starting to heat up and I'm in my 50s. Where do I go? Who's the gynecologist for me? Who's going to understand all this?
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think we've seen a collective. I mean, this is so exciting now to see that there is much more menopausal awareness. There's the MIDI health appointments specifically for menopause. I remember you were like in tears telling me about how you finally got an appointment that literally was devoted to menopause.
Yep.
How far we've come from just a few years ago where literally people were whispering about it, as if it's this weird problem. Give us a break, everybody.
So that's
Um,
a beautiful place where some righteous anger and rage absolutely set everybody on a healing path, even the care providers, because they too, they looked in their toolbox and they had bupkis for
yeah,
us, right? Even they were angry and or are angry and frustrated. They have not gotten proper training in medical school themselves.
that's right. That's right. And it, you know, anger is such a tricky emotion because, like we were talking about, a lot of us have this conditioning to just not be angry, right? That boys get to be angry. As someone raising boys, there's this sort of like expectation that they can fight to a point where I'm like, don't label them. I don't think they have to all be this angry. And
Exactly.
girls aren't. I mean, it's just so silly. We need to drop that stuff and to allow us all to just have the full spectrum of emotions. And I do love that at this age, I just think we are fed up. We are tired. We hear it time and time again from people we love that it is just, it's not even anger. Half the time it's just being real and honest. You know,
Exactly. And having some boundaries and just being like, I don't like that. This doesn't work for me. Well, and that has been such a beautiful gift for me in midlife to just not even care if I piss you off with my anger. And I think that's been probably the biggest gift. And I'm not here to say that's easy because there are people in my life right this minute who are quite angry with me because I said the thing. And I will do it again.
That's right.
I will no longer sit on my anger, my rage, my boundaries being crossed, someone trying to fuck with me and trying to like or make me walk on eggshells or make me try to keep the peace. Because at the end of the day, I knew I wasn't keeping my peace. If I'm keeping theirs, what about mine? And I've just
Yeah.
prioritized my peace, my happiness, my pleasure, my joy.
Yeah.
And that feels really strong. And that for me, the anger also is like a little warning to the other person. Yeah,
Hmm.
you crossed the boundaries. I'm not playing. I'm not the same woman I was even 5 years ago.
Right.
Don't play with me because you will get burned by me
Yeah.
and my anger, which I'm very quick to also lately.
Yes.
I used
Call it
to
out
hold
more.
that back more, but now I'm very quick. I don't like that. Stop it.
Oh,
Knock it off.
I
And
used to.
in my mom voice sometimes, people are like,
Yes.
oh,
Oh,
Shay's scary. And
yeah.
I can live with that. I'm cool with that.
I used to hold it in and it would fester and it would turn into something else. And it is so much better now to just call it and to call it in the moment. And then we move past it. I
Yeah.
just had a little friction with my family the other day because I was trying to have us find a compromise. It was one of these Saturdays where everyone in the house had three different things they needed to do, right? But there was one family event that was a priority that we knew we had to all do. And I just kind of put my foot down and said, we all need to compromise on this. And it was uncomfortable for a minute. And then it worked. And being okay with like making some waves because sometimes we got to just kind of cut through all the busyness and just get to the truth. And I find too that when I get into that zone where I'm like, I am just speaking my truth and it's like a laser focus. It's like there's something that just aligns in you and goes, this is what it is. And you can't deny it. And so it getting and exercising the ability to speak like that more directly, more honestly, to the point feels
And
so
in the
good.
moment,
And in
if
the
we can,
moment,
not,
if we get right, we're
not
not
every
saying,
situation calls for it, but it can be very powerful and potent if we can.
and I think I'm retraining my family because I think my family's a little bit like, oh, okay. I mean, I've always had a little bit of that, but I just am finding that it's getting to be more and more that. But it's not necessarily rage. It's just a boundary. It's just a
Yes,
clarity. And then the irony is then it's not even anything scary anymore. It's just what I'd rather do in communication, which is just be honest.
exactly. Well, and I think about all the times when I've been able to come to you with my anger or frustration about something and how quickly you're able to like dump it all on the plate, sift through it, and help me. Right. And so that I'm not then inappropriately raging against something or someone, but it helps me have a safe place. I process out loud. I know you do too
Oh
sometimes.
yeah.
So it's such a beautiful thing to be able to do in community, which makes me super curious. We have several girlfriends on the live with us. I'm wondering if anybody has anything this strikes a nerve. Is there anything that made you angry lately? How are you managing this? I would love to hear if any of our girlfriends want to chime in, and we'll say your comment, here on the live stream
We would
because I'm
love
just so curious.
Yeah. Yeah. We would love to hear if you have any feedback or just what is pissing you off right now. What is making you rageful? And we want to give you permission to do it. Obviously, in some of the ways we've been discussing, carefully and with humanity and with self-care.
And
But then
self-awareness,
and
right? And
self-awareness.
being responsible. Yeah.
Right. Well, I'll give one more example that as our girlfriends might be thinking and responding as well, which is a wonderful musician in the Bay Area because my background is in singing as well. So Sly Stone just passed away
Oh,
yesterday
yeah.
from Sly and the Family Stone, and he is one of my favorite musicians. He created a band back in the 60s, I want to say, that was multiracial, that was multi-gendered. It was a totally new thing when it came out and created a kind of music that never had been heard before. And in his music, he put in some really important messages, but kind of delivered it to society in a very like digestible way. So he was sort of a part activist and a part entertainer. And a beautiful documentary was just created about Sly Stone from Questlove, who is, in his own right, an incredible musician, part of the Roots, a drummer. I think he's in the house band on the Jimmy Fallon show. So he's done a couple of these documentaries, and the one that just came out on Sly Stone is beautiful. And in it, he talks about this, and he talked about it in an interview about the documentary, which is that you can take your pain and your anger and make something beautiful out of it. And so in Sly's case, he made art, he made music, and he even slipped in a little bit of rage in there. He had to do it in a sort of stealth way that, as Questlove explained, many African Americans have always had to do, where you're like, you're doing it with a smile, but you're putting in your real feelings and your real rage. Um, and that what he was getting at, and I thought this was so beautiful, was that so much of real art is linked to our pain and our rage. And if we want to write, if we want to create, if we want to kind of experience life and communicate about it in a full way, we've got to permit the anger to come in, and even move through us, right? And so if you're an artist, let that fuel your work, whether it's like Sly Stone, writing music and creating bands and, being a trailblazer of sorts, or even just in your own creations, even if it's for yourself, allowing that in there can be so powerful. And it's funny, Felicia, because when I look at some of my favorite artists, I'm like, oh, yeah, a lot of them are so angry, but for good reason. And not only, but in there, you feel anger in a good, righteous way.
Absolutely. Actually, as you're talking, I'm thinking about Alanis Morissette's album, Jagged Little Pill, and how I used that album medicinally because I was in my 20s when that came out. So I was still like being a good girl and walking on eggshells and taking care of everybody else. But then there's this album of like, rah, a woman wronged and scorned and all the shit and all the ironic things that happened to her. And I thought about that, how I would use it medicinally. Like when I couldn't tap my own anger or frustration about things, I would listen to the entire album and sure enough, something would get released. And I would get, because there's so much trapped energy inside of the anger, right? And then anger unprocessed can turn to rage. And if it's not addressed and acknowledged, so it really can build on itself. And so that's part
Mm.
of what I'm saying about us being responsible with it, but using it like a GPS. Oh, I'm angry. Let me figure out why. What's happened? What does it remind me of? So what do I need to do? Do I need to
Yeah.
say something? Do I need to do something? Or do I need to be something? Change
I,
something?
I love that Alanis Morissette was your, kind of medium for that. Mine was Sinead O'Connor. Remember how angry she was?
Oh, yeah.
That was my girl. Her namesake, her O'Connor, my family has O'Connors. And so I was convinced that she was a long distant cousin of mine, but she had so much rage. But then she could also turn around and sound like a songbird. And I was like, who is this incredible person? And so definitely you see young people tapping into music to experience the anger that they can't say. And I think that's where you get hip hop, and that's where you get punk rock and a lot of musical forms. And it's healthy to be processing that and to have that mirrored back, because I don't think we see enough examples of healthy anger.
Right.
I talk about this again in my public speaking and communication with people. We kind of get these extreme examples, right? We get the soap opera, like Real Housewives style anger. We get the strongman anger. But where is that just good, healthy, setting boundary, I said no kind of anger? Where do we see that? And I think we need to practice that and see that more, honestly.
Absolutely. And we need to encourage each other. So when we see our girlfriends doing it, to support them and love them through it, because they might need a safe place to unload some of that so they can work through it and get responsible themselves and really understand where are they at. And then they might even need some support from those of us, who are talking about this and feeling a little bit more safe and comfortable, accessing our anger and whatnot. helping them. How do they want to express it appropriately? Do they want to write a letter and burn it, or write a letter and send it, or say the thing, or set the call, or go get Jessica's checklist on how to have difficult conversations? Because man, I used to avoid that kind of stuff like anything. And now I run toward it with my chosen loved ones, the people who can hang in there with me, could hear it. They're self responsible. They're looking at what's their part in it too.
Yep.
The people who are all pointing fingers, I'm not going to go jump into the lion's den with them. But I'm realizing how many people in my life also have the capacity to hear my upset, hear my anger about something or a boundary that got crossed.
No, you're right.
That's been, talk about life affirming, because now I know who's there in it with me, who can,
Oh,
shiny parts.
yes. It froze for a second, but you're back. I
Oh,
agree. And I want to say that you're one of my dear friends who I feel like I can do that with. We have had some difficult conversations where we've had to kind of compromise or get clear about even what we want this project to look like and in other capacities. And I've always trusted that we can set boundaries and we can even tell each other, oh, I didn't want to do this and you did this made me uncomfortable because
yeah,
I trust that we're going to be able to handle it with each other. And I will say that if you're ever in a position where you are with a friend or a loved one and they are saying something that might be a little hard to hear and it gives you a little poke, but it kind of gives you a poke in that way that is like a medicine for you. Sit with that. Sit with that discomfort. It's pointing you in a good direction. That's very different than the poke that is mean and abusive and not productive. And we get to learn how to distinguish the difference between those. And to what Flachet is saying here so beautifully is when we surround ourselves by the people where we know we can be honest, we can be freaking real, we can show up however we're showing up, that is healing. That is healing.
it really is.
It really is. And I want to thank you because I think we've been on this journey and I think we identify that we both struggled with that. I was like you. I would so much rather do anything else than be confrontational. And yet, through being confrontational or just honest with people, those are the people I'm closest with because
Yes. And you have the most emotional safety with.
yep,
It's not that complicated, but again, we as a culture, I'm not here to point fingers. As a culture, we have been taught that that's not a thing to do. If someone hurts your feelings, you run away and you ghost them and you never speak to them again. That's sort of become the culture now of dealing with hurt feelings. And I love what you were saying, that, the only reason it could hurt, that needs to be healed and addressed, right? And if I use something you say that's ouchy, like, oh dear, she called me out on that thing. It's in a healthy relationship, I can look at that. Well, I trust Jessica, and if she's telling me I'm doing this, or something I'm saying or doing or being is hurtful, I don't want to be that in Jessica's life, because Jessica is everything to me. I love her so much. And so then I will do that personal work for myself, and then hopefully, be able to come back and be able to have that big slice of humble pie, and to actually thank you.
yeah,
Thank you for having the courage to point out that I was being an asshole, or that I was being difficult, or that I caused harm.
yep,
Because no, I mean, and you and I, like you said, we've had some situations like that where I'm some ouchy things that landed for me, but were so beautiful because I trusted you, that there was some truth there, did my own work on it. Gulp. Sure enough, Jessica's right. And I was able to come back and thank you, because you saved me from probably embarrassing myself out someplace else if I was doing that out in the world.
oh my gosh. Well, right back at you, honey. You have given me some real reflection, mirror holding up in such a loving, caring way, which is again, I think the beautiful point is that this whole idea of how to be honest and how to set boundaries and even let that come from kind of a place of anger can be done with like real care and self-awareness. So yes, let's not explode like volcanoes.
No.
Let's not other people. That just it doesn't create anything that we can work with. Um, And let's keep practicing and exercising this muscle of giving ourselves permission to be angry in healthy ways.
Yeah.
And if you need some help, Flaché's beautiful Substack Lemurian Lullaby is such a beautiful reset in doing some really good self healing and reflection. And I really think that it's a beautiful thing that we need in this pretty hard time we're going through right now. So thank you for your Substack.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. And thank you for all of the raw honesty you share on your Substack because you actually have a checklist that you're walking girlfriends through how to have these difficult conversations and
Yeah.
how do we use our vocal instrument to live the life we are here to live. And
Yeah.
for a lot of us is emerging daily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, the workshop is available for everybody from last month. So if you go to Love Your Voice, you can watch the workshop about how to have a difficult conversation where we talk about these things, whether it's at work or it's at home or it's negotiating something. But yes, I think this was so helpful, Flachet. Thank you. I feel more hopeful about what we can do in this day and age after talking with you. And I think that's what it's all about.
I do too. Thank you so much for being on this journey with us. Girlfriends, thank you for joining us live. This is our new thing. We're doing our podcast live now. That's for forevermore. This is how we're going to be doing it. So thank you for showing up and for your contributions. We love you so much.
Definitely. If you want to watch it on the replay or listen to it on our podcast, just check out Girlfriends of a Certain Age, either here on Substack or wherever you listen to your podcast, and you can listen to the replay of this recording. Okay, so until next time, bye, girlfriends.
Bye.
Bye.